only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Sean Moore. In the West Midlands, the M6 northbound's got long delays after an earlier accident between Junction 8 for the M5 interchange and Junction 9 for Wednesbury. Queues are back for the Spaghetti Junction. Worcestershire, the M5 northbound's got queues after an earlier obstruction between Franklin Services and Junction 3. Heading into Kent, the M25 anti-clockwise has got delays after an earlier accident from the Swanee interchange to the Darrauth interchange. M20 coastbound has got speed restrictions between Junctions 8 and 9 because of Operation Brock. Essex, the M11 northbound is a lane out because of a broken down vehicle from Junction 7A at Harlow North to Junction 8. And the M25 QE2 bridge has got long delays after a van broke down earlier on from Junction 31 at Lakeside. The queues are back just after Junction 29 for Romford.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Dewbs & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good evening, it's 6 o'clock. This is Dewbs & Co with me, Bev Turner, tonight in for Michelle. So as the families of 3 murdered British aid workers issue heartbreaking statements about their loss, is this the tipping point in the bombardment of Gaza? Should the sales of arms to Israel now be stopped? And writing emotionally in today's Daily Mail, Lord Blunkett has urged Sir Keir Starmer to launch a biometric digital ID system if he becomes Prime Minister. To tackle the small boats crisis, is it just an excuse to monitor all of us innocent people, or could it be a genuine deterrent to illegal migrants? And in the last year alone, while more hard-working people than ever struggled to make ends meet, planet Earth has seen the creation of another 141 billionaires. I'll tell you what industries they work in, and I'm going to ask how we keep ambition alive whilst perhaps reining in the super rich. And cook Prue Leith says that the junk food industry is winning the obesity war in Britain. She's accused the government of being too weak to end the obesity crisis. Is she right? All of that and a lot more in the next hour. First, though, the very latest news headlines with Sophia.
Bev, thank you. From the GB Newsroom at 6 o'clock, your top story this hour. A new poll suggests Labour could sweep to victory with more than 400 seats at the next election, leaving the Tories with just 155. YouGov is predicting a landslide for Sir Keir Starmer, with the Conservatives projected to win even less seats than a previous poll conducted in January. And another change of leader may be off the cards, with other MPs, including Penny Mordaunt, Ian Duncan-Smith and Jacob Rees-Mogg, all trailing their Labour challengers. And the Reform UK party has removed 2 parliamentary candidates for making statements that they say fell beneath their standards. Jonathan Kay and Mick Greeno will no longer contest seats after campaign group Hope Not Hate accused them of sharing racist views on social media. Shadow Foreign Secretary David Lammy says the government should suspend arms sales to Israel if it's clear that international law has been breached. It's after British aid workers John Chapman, James Henderson and James Kirby were killed when their convoy was hit by an Israeli airstrike while they were delivering vital food aid. They were part of a group of 7 aid workers from the World Central Kitchen Organisation. Mr Lamy says Britain cannot supply arms to Israel if it's proven to have broken international law.
I have now been calling for 12 days for David Cameron to publish the legal advice so that we are clear on whether Israel has contravened international humanitarian law and therefore arms sales should be suspended.
Questions are being asked about how a 43-year-old man was able to commit 2 sex attacks years apart despite receiving a jail sentence. Fareed Isa Tariq will spend 18 years in prison for raping a woman in Swindon after he tricked her into accepting a ride in a fake taxi. He was previously jailed in 2012 for a near-identical crime. 1 in 20 people who try to book GP appointments over the telephone are told to call back another day. That's according to a major new survey. It found that a third of people in England who have tried to book an appointment in the last month say they've struggled to speak to someone. More than 1 in 10 whose calls were answered were told they'd need to wait for more than 2 weeks. And among those who eventually did get an appointment, 20% reported having a poor experience. A video of a toddler vaping posted on social media has led to 2 women being charged. The footage was reportedly filmed in Ayrshire and showed a toddler inhaling from a pink vape as adults watch. Another video then showed the toddler coughing after having used the vape. The infant, thought to be aged between 1 and 2, is safe and well, according to Police Scotland. 2 19-year-old women have now been charged. Police in Finland say a 12-year-old boy suspected of carrying out a shooting at his school yesterday had been bullied, which officers are treating as the motive. Another student, also aged 12, died in the shooting, which happened in the suburb of the capital, Helsinki. 2 girls of the same age were also seriously hurt. At least 9 people have died, with more than 800 injured after a major earthquake in Taiwan. This was the moment it struck the East Coast this morning. Tremors were recorded as high as 7.7 magnitude during the morning rush hour. News anchors rocked by the earthquake during live broadcasts remained steady on air whilst the newsroom was shaking. Rescue teams are now working into the night in search of survivors. More than 100 are thought to be trapped in tunnels, under buildings or stuck under landslides. And Royal Mail is pushing the postal regulator to speed up reforms, including cutting back on second-class deliveries to just 3 days a week. The Postal Service says urgent changes are needed to cut costs following a major drop in demand, falling from 20 billion letters to just 7 billion each year. But the plan, which would save around £300 million, would also lead to a possible 1,000 redundancies. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Bev.
Very good evening. It is 6 minutes after 6. This is Dewbs & Co with me, Bev Turner, tonight, while Michelle is on her Easter holidays. Joining me until 7 o'clock, my panel, former advisor to Jeremy Corbyn, James Schneider, and political commentator Joseph David. You can get in touch with us this evening, gbviews at gbnews.com or on Twitter at gbnews. So, Israeli Defence Forces Chief Herzai Halevi has issued an apology after Israeli forces killed 7 aid workers, including 3 British veterans, on Monday. The aid workers were providing security for the World Central Kitchen charity in Gaza. Israel have said that the strikes were unintended. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak came out and said that the deaths appalled him, describing the situation in Gaza as intolerable. And the families of the 3 British aid workers who lost their lives have now issued heartbreaking statements about their devastation at events today. Is this the tipping point in the bombardment of Gaza now? Should the sales of arms to Israel be stopped? James, let me come to you first. It feels like today there is a change in the air in terms of Israeli allies, but probably just as importantly, the mood of the wider population.
So I think if you looked at the mood of the wider population, it's months and months and months that the public, if you look at polls, have been horrified by the ongoing war crimes that are being committed by the State of Israel against the Palestinian people. these aid workers who were killed are added to already around 200 aid workers who have been killed in Israeli bombings so far in the conflict. There's over 100 journalists who have also been killed. There have been assaults on pretty much all of the medical infrastructure. Of course, we know tens of thousands of people have died. So that's where the public has already been. The politicians and the media class in this country have been way behind them. But now, at last, perhaps they're catching up, because it's, for large parts of the political class, it's one thing for British bombs and British bullets and British diplomatic cover to be complicit in one of the great crimes of our age, but when they are involved in killing our own citizens, it's absolutely clear that arms sales to Israel must be stopped, because we can't be selling arms that are being used in gross abuses of human rights. And that is what we have been seeing for 6 months, and it's been clear that that is what has been happening for 6 months.
David, those images from October the 7th were almost like nothing we've ever seen before. But we are 6 months later now. Does it, to you, feel that the response is disproportionate?
War is almost never proportionate. War almost always falls hardest on the most vulnerable. And quite frankly, the incredulity of people who have just realised this surprises me. War is terrible. War needs to be avoided. It is for that reason that, to a large extent, organisations like Hamas should not be geared up and presented as legitimate peace partners, when in actual fact they were preparing for this attack. They were preparing for this brutality. Now, I have to say that as human beings, we are rational, we are empathic. When we see the horrific suffering that is going on, it is natural for us to be disgusted by what we see. And it can even feel cathartic to use the most extreme language, the most hyperbolic language to describe what is going on. It's unhelpful. James, the war is not against the Palestinian people, it's against Hamas. Unfortunately,
tell that to the tens of thousands of Palestinians who have been killed.
It is a horrific,
who have been predictably flattened,
brutal war.
Who have had their infrastructure targeted by AI-generated targeting, power targets which are to target infrastructure that civilians use.
James,
the shutting off of food, fuel, medicine and water on the 8th of October was guaranteed to create the famine-like conditions which we are seeing now. That is not famine-like conditions for Hamas. That is famine-like conditions for 2.3 million people.
Go on, David.
Well, surely it highlights the fact that Hamas are using civilian infrastructure. You know it, and I know it. The Palestinian people are suffering horrifically, and if I could flick a switch and this war would end with peace, I would do it in a second. But the Israelis are trying to recover their hostages who are being raped, who are being brutalised in a manner that you and I probably, thank God, will never have to imagine even, right?
When hostages were released, was that when there was a temporary ceasefire, or was it when they were continuing the bombings, the devastation, the destruction, the occupation of the largest hospital, the destruction of medical facilities, the bombing of journalists, the destruction of aid convoys? When was that? Was it during the destruction bit, or was it during the temporary ceasefire bit?
I don't want to see armed conflict. I think you're naive if you think that the fact Israel went in didn't make an impact, didn't cause those hostage negotiations to take place, didn't strengthen anyone's hand in that, or at least give them some bargaining power.
Then why are the families of the hostages themselves angry at the invasion? Why, in the first place, was there a protest at Netanyahu's office calling for there to not be the invasion in the first place? Why are there family members at protests saying that what they want to see is negotiation to bring their loved ones home? Because, of course, that is what should happen. The taking of civilians is a crime.
To be a hostage, or to be the family of a hostage, is a situation none of us should ever be in. Of course, they're going to think of any scenario where their loved one might come back unharmed. So, of course, they're going to say those things. But I would ask you, what would you like Israel to do? To pull out, allow Hamas to rearm, and to come back and do another October 7th again and again, as they've said?
I would, of course, like to see Israel pull out entirely. And I would
leave Hamas? Leave Hamas to rearm?
Just hold on a second. I mean, let's see who's been doing the larger, when you say you can't negotiate with one side, I mean, you have to negotiate with the people who are there. The Palestinian people have to, have to negotiate with a state which has carried out horrific and, terrorist and illegal acts against them, not just since October the 7th, but for decades. So, yes, the state of Israel should cease the bombardment, because it isn't doing anything. This is not creating long-term stability for Israel either.
You want Israel to pull out and leave Hamas to rearm.
Want Israel...
One second. You want the UK to stop funding Israel. Do you believe Israel should exist at all?
I think that... I don't think that an apartheid state, I don't think a state which...
Again, another slur.
It's not a slur. It's an objective... No, it's an objective legal term in international law.
Hold on, wait. Yes or no? Yes or no? Should Israel exist?
Let me...
Should Israel exist?
Let me finish. The question is, in what form? Does a state have a right to occupy others? If you're saying that's Israel, then that involves occupying others and operating an apartheid system. No one has a right to that. Now, are you... No, wait. Now, are you saying... Because this is how it's usually presented. It's usually presented, if you're saying that Israel doesn't have a right to do whatever it wants, you think that Jews don't have a right to live there. I think that Jewish people have an absolute right to live there, in the same way that I think that Palestinians have an absolute right to return there.
Both people have very strong links to the land, and there in my opinion, should be a free, fair, two-state solution, contiguous. Would that be acceptable to you?
Sure, but it's not up to me. Of course, but my point is...
I'm glad we got there.
But is that even possible now, Joseph? Like, is that, given the bloodshed of the last 6 months, the next generation of division which has been created?
It has to be possible. It's the only option that we have, and there's been equally brutal conflicts. For example, between the Greeks and the Turks, they've managed to make peace. Peace is possible. We can live together. In actual fact, the Israelis and Palestinians are far more similar than they are.
Do you have? Do either of you? I want a time scale off you. Best and worst case scenario. Best case scenario that this conflict is brought to an end and a two-state solution is found.
I'm for doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. It's very possible that there'd be a two-state solution without peace at first. But the right thing to do is the right thing to do.
Within what, a year? Within 2 years?
It could
10
happen.
years?
It could happen very quickly if there were legitimate peace partners. If the Palestinian leadership were genuinely ready for peace, and the Israeli leadership had maybe a slightly different leader who might engage.
Do you view any of the current cabinet as being, in your view, legitimate partners for peace in the strict terms that you've put forward?
There are absolutely, because I'm sure you know,
do you think
Israel has coalition governments. There's many different factions there. So absolutely, there would be people in that government who would be part of a government for peace. I genuinely believe that.
What about you, James, in terms of a time scale here? What's the best case scenario to stop this death toll of 33,000 Palestinians dead at the moment, 75,000 wounded?
Yeah. So in order to stop the destruction, we need to, as much as possible, throw sand in the wheels of the war machine, which is why
stop selling bombs.
Stop selling bombs and stop providing diplomatic... please wait. Stop providing diplomatic cover for these extremely grave crimes. That's the first step. And there are lots of things that people can do at home, and there are lots of things that people are already doing. It's not just about protesting. It's not just about political pressure. There's actions that people are taking within, if they work in companies that are complicit in what is going on, and there's a wide range of them, engaging in blockades and direct action against arms shipments and against fuel that is used to fuel this war. So those are the immediate things. Then in the larger sense, Israel, I believe, has had two objectives which run contradictory. One is to have as much of the land as possible, and the other is normalisation. And for a while, these two things were running together. And that was the supposed success of the Netanyahu policy. And that has now been completely finished. Israel will not be a normal state while it is occupying another people, and while there are no rights, there is no liberation for the Palestinian people, who for decades have been dispossessed by the State of Israel and by its backers.
Joseph, respond to that.
You mentioned stopping the wheels of war. What you're suggesting is that Israel, which is a country surrounded by foes who want to destroy it, won't have the ammunition or the support to defend itself. So again, I'd ask you, do you want Israel to exist?
Which state is in the region, is nuclear armed, has the capacity to carry out extremely technically impressive precision strikes in a city in the north of Syria? And this is my point about targeting. If you have it's not like Israel doesn't have the capacity to be extremely targeted. If you look at that assassination, it is extraordinarily...
Do you think they did it on purpose?
What?
Why would they? The death of the aid workers, do you think
why would they
kill
those aid workers?
I don't know why they killed those particular aid workers. I do know they've killed 200 of them. I don't know what... I don't know if... Of course, some of the journalists were targeted, of those over 100 who have been killed. I don't know about every single case. I think really what you're seeing here is the value of life ascribed to Palestinians by the Israeli state is so low that their actions will obviously lead to famine, will obviously lead to mass slaughter, will obviously lead to the physical and mental scarring of an entire generation of children. Half the population, basically, are children. That is not a path to peace at all.
The IDF chief was really clear, and he said the strike was not carried out with the intention of harming WCK aid workers. It was a mistake that followed a misidentification at night during complex...
Misidentification. If you don't care,
James,
then you do it.
James,
that's what's happened again and again and again and again. And then...
Go on, hang on.
You are purposefully taking the least empathic route to Israel on any factor.
The least
empathic route. Israel is in an incredibly difficult position, right?
Yes, because it's carrying out a genocide against another group of people.
You don't want me to interrupt. Allow me to speak as well.
Yes.
You've not taken into account the density of the population, the size of the land, the fact that Hamas are using guerrilla terrorist tactics. You're ignoring all of that. Right? The fact that Israel are trying to get their hostages back, they are, and they're known for, trying to limit civilian casualties.
I do not believe that they are remotely limiting civilian casualties.
They're trying.
No, I do not believe that.
You don't believe they're trying?
No, I do not believe so. So let's take, even if we accept, which is not true, but even if we accept that there's a terrorist command centre in the Al-Shifa hospital, which there wasn't, but let's assume there was. If I were a military commander, and the option is some terrorists have gone in there and you can destroy it and you can kill dozens or hundreds of health workers, of patients. You know what? I wouldn't order the destruction of that hospital.
You know what, fellas?
I have a higher value for human life.
Let's carry this on after the break. We do have to take a very quick break. So don't go anywhere. We're going to carry this on.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Is it OK to call people fat? I won't call Bev fat because she isn't. She won't call me fat because I'm not. But the fitness fanatic, Derek Evans, you might know him better as 90s icon Mr Motivator, recently told a podcast diabetes have gone through the roof. You should be able to call people fat.
Well, he joins us now. Good morning, Derek. Good morning.
Good morning.
Great to see you. So I think what you're getting at is this idea that we've become so polite about weight that we're ignoring the elephant in the room. If you'll forgive the phraseology there, and actually sometimes you've got to be cruel to be kind.
Well, actually, this has been taken out of all context. I actually didn't say you're entitled to call people fat. What I did say is that in the 80s and 90s, I remember the way I got into television, there was a gentleman walking at reception while I was waiting for the people I was training. And for some reason, I got up and I prodded him in the belly. And I said to him, you need to deal with that. That was fat. We have a nation where obesity, diabetes is killing every one of us. And unless we take responsibility for our health, rather than waiting for government to do this, government to do that, it is our responsibility, right, to look after our independence and our health. And as we get older, it's even more critical, right? And that's why I'm here as an example saying to you, listen, I'm 71 years of age and movement is medicine. And you can't sit around watching television and not going out to the gym or wherever. You will never, ever be able to look after your family and everything you've worked for. You will lose it. I've never seen a hearse a deposit account behind a hearse. No matter what you work for, the most important thing you can do with your life is every hour do something active. Every hour.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Bev Turner. We're going to pick up where we left off after the break. It's been a long day for me. Do Britain's Newsroom at 9:30 every morning if you're not used to seeing me at this time of the day. We've got James Schneider with us this evening and Joseph David as well. I want to just consider this event of this death of these 3 British aid workers, guys, because they were in a vehicle. They were in 3 vehicles, actually. They had GPS trackers. They were on a route that was okayed by the IDF. They were hit from above. There were symbols on the top of the car denoting the charity that they worked for. The first car was hit. The passengers got out. They climbed into the second car. That was then hit. A third car in the convoy approached to pick up the occupants, and that was then hit. When you actually see the chain of events, Joseph, it's very difficult not to conclude that this was more than just a mistake.
Well, I think it was obviously a deliberate targeting, but I think they obviously thought it was somebody else. The fact that this car from the World Central Kitchen was on an agreed road with the IDF, it shows that there is this liaison between the IDF and aid workers. And I heard an Israeli spokesman describe the World Central Kitchen as one of the good guys. So the idea that Israel would purposefully target it is for the birds. It was clearly a terrible mistake. There needs to be an investigation. And the way that you described it, the way that it took place, is horrific. Just to say, in an urban environment where there is this kind of brutal war taking place, unfortunately, these heroes, the aid workers, are in a very perilous position. They are.
Obviously, the internet being what the internet is, there is already speculation that as these guys were ex-Special Boat Services and also ex-SAS, that maybe they were deliberately targeted for that reason. James, we have no evidence of that. That's pure speculation.
I've got no idea, and I can understand why aid agencies have this type of high-level security when 200 aid workers have been killed in the last 6 months. So, look, we don't know precisely what happened for these killings in the same way we don't know precisely what happened in all of these other killings. But we can see a clear pattern. When the medical staff at the Al-Shifa hospital talk about their colleagues being executed, and we're told by the State of Israel that not a single civilian was harmed and that this was just an operation that took out terrorists. When you have medical staff saying that when they try to get home, they take off their scrubs because they think they're more likely to be targeted as identifiable as medical staff. You hear these stories again and again among this tens of thousands of people who have been killed in a deliberate policy of destruction. You have to remember, it was on the 8th of October that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that we will raise Gaza to rubble. And that is precisely what they have done. Every single element, in the broader sense, of these crimes that we have seen, which are horrific, have been announced. They have been signalled. We don't need special investigations to find out why is there a famine. There's a famine because they shut off all the food and closed the borders, because it is an area that is occupied.
Do you think, Joseph, if Netanyahu was to go and to step down, which he's not likely to do, there could be more chance of a peaceful solution here?
At the moment, there's this existential war going on for Israel, and until it finishes, I don't think anyone's going anywhere. But Israel is a genuine democracy, and they will have elections, and they will be able to bring in whoever they want. I would say that when we're dealing with such a sensitive issue, to base our opinion on stories might be slightly irresponsible. I think we should look for investigation, see what comes out of the investigation, base our opinions on that. I know, James, you've got long-held views on this, and you've supported the Palestinian people for a long time. I try to be balanced and look objectively. I know that
yes, so do I.
It's difficult.
No, so do I.
But I'll wait to hear what comes out from the investigations. I find it hard to believe that the IDF would execute doctors. I think that the majority of the deaths that have taken place have been as a result of unintended fire in a very, very densely populated area. Another thing to say is that these are organisations that are run by Hamas, which is not a trustworthy organisation.
So which organisations are the ones that are run by Hamas?
Well, they're at the behest of Hamas. All of these doctors need to be careful what they say. Hamas is a totalitarian regime, and you can bet if they said the wrong thing, they'd hear about it.
I mean, I think the idea that doctors who are trying to save lives when there is almost no medical equipment, when almost half of those who have been killed are children, when they are carrying out amputations without anaesthetic, when they've had to invent an entire new category of wounded child, no surviving family, that what they're doing is some powerful propaganda.
That's not what I said. That's not what I said. I said they have to be careful for their lives.
Now,
they have to be careful for their lives.
All you have to do is listen to what the Israeli officials have said that they want to do, and then look at the outcome. You don't have to be a genius to see that. If they say there's not going to be any food, and then there's a famine, you can see what happened. If they take out the entirety of the medical system in the Gaza Strip, you can see what's happened. The doctors who work within it, they're not doing that. They're not giving evidence about what has happened to them and the people whose lives they're trying to save because of some threat of some imagined totalitarianism. I mean, it's
imagined totalitarianism. So Hamas is not a totalitarian organisation. They don't push people off buildings, tie them to motorbikes and drive down the road. Hamas are fluffy teddy bears, right?
No, of course not. But firstly, that's not what the definition of totalitarian is for starters. So that's
no. But at no point, you understand what I'm saying.
At no point have I said that Hamas are fluffy teddy bears or that they are nice people or anything like that.
You keep mentioning the rhetoric of Israeli politicians. You haven't said one thing about what Hamas have said. It's as if they don't exist to you. And this is, I'm sorry, but it's a trademark of the left to infantilize the Palestinians, pretend that nothing that Hamas does has any value or can do any harm.
I mean, of course, things that Hamas can do. Of the rockets. Of course, Hamas can do things that have harm. They killed civilians in the Negev kibbutzim at the Nova Film Festival, and they took civilian as well as military hostages. Those are crimes. It's unbelievably clear. Of course that is happening.
It's nice to hear you say it, honestly, because since you've come in here, this is the first time you've mentioned
that. Do you know why? Because that happened on the 7th of October. And do you know what has been happening every single day since? There's been the equivalent of a 7th of October that has been done to the people of Gaza. And there is a very big difference, which is we are British citizens sitting here in London.
Yep.
And our government does not arm Hamas. We don't give Hamas technology that can help it kill Israelis. And we don't provide it with diplomatic cover. We are not complicit in Hamas's crimes, but we are complicit in the crimes of the State of Israel against the Palestinians.
On that...
And so that is why, of course, that is what I'm going to talk about day after day after day, because those are the crimes that are happening, and that is the role that we can play.
So your labelling of actions as crimes is one thing. But what I will say is, on this topic of arming Israel, I agree with the Labour leadership. Israel is an ally of the United Kingdom, and Israel will suffer the obvious effects if they don't have the arms and the resources to defend themselves in a very hostile area. You're not taking any of this into account. So you're simply ignoring what's happened as if it's in a vacuum.
Israel could have...
Yeah.
Of course, Israel had not just a right, duty to defend its citizens in the Negev Kibbutzim and at the Nova Music Festival, and has a duty to secure life for the people who it occupies, including Gaza. Of course, it is absolutely failing in those duties. But why was Southern Command under-equipped and under-resourced? Because they have sent troops to the West Bank the better to carry out the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians there. That has been the policy.
Again, with the slur, ethnic cleansing.
It's not a slur, it's an objective thing. Ethnic cleansing is when you remove one people from a land and you put another people in.
So why has the population gone up?
That's what ethnic cleansing is. You know, because you are an intelligent...
Just by the way, I'm not...
You know, because you're an intelligent man.
I want
the West Bank has been broken. You said contiguous two-state. It was very good to hear you say that. Very, very good you had to hear you say that word. But the policy of Israel has deliberately now for decades been to break up the West Bank through a policy of ethnic cleansing, because it's removing land from the Palestinians and replacing them with settlers.
We could talk about this all night, guys. I'm so sorry, Yosef, we don't have time, but I just want to bring in a couple of viewers. Mike has said, I'm saddened by the deaths of aid workers, but I do not think arms sales to Israel should be stopped. Israel is a country threatened by surrounding countries with extinction. They've got every right to defend themselves. And Nicholas has said, well said, James. How refreshing to hear someone speaking the truth in the ghastly goings-on in Palestine. Keep your emails coming. Still tonight, Lord Blunkett has called for Sir Keir Starmer to bring back, well, not bring back, digital ID cards, biometric version this time. He said he's going to tackle the small boat crisis. Will it work? See you in 3.
Hello again and welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Well, there will be some further heavy rain first thing across southern areas, but in general, Thursday offers some much drier weather compared to the wet weather we've seen recently. Northeastern areas have suffered the most with the rain throughout today. That rain will clear away through tonight, but the next batch arrives into the southwest. We'll see 2 bursts of rain. This one will turn heavy at first in the southwest, but as it pushes into parts of northern England, it will turn a little bit dry, but most areas will see some heavy outbreaks of rain through the night. Further north and west, though, it should stay dry, and we could see a touch of frostbite tomorrow morning. But it's in the southwest tomorrow morning where the heaviest rain will be, and that will push into parts of Wales, the Midlands, into the southeast throughout the rush hour. So if you are moving about on Thursday morning, expect some tricky travelling conditions. Once that does clear out the way, we'll see a mix of sunshine and showers for many areas of England and Wales. There will be some decent sunny spells in between. It will feel fairly pleasant in that sunshine, but further north, it's going to considerably drier day than it has been lately. We'll see highs of around 10 or 11 degrees across northwestern areas. It's still cold though in the far north of Scotland, and as the next batch of rain bumps into that cold air on Friday morning, there's a risk of some snow across the Highlands and Grampians, and we'll see outbreaks of quite heavy rain push through many northern areas throughout Friday. Further south though, it turns drier as the day goes on, but the weekend is looking unsettled and seasonably windy, but exceptionally mild. That's all for now. Bye-bye. The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Sean Moore. In West Yorkshire, the M1 northbound, the exit slip road is slow. A lane closed at junction 45 for Leeds Cross Green because of a broken down vehicle. Manchester, the anti-clockwise M60, it's a lane closed on the exit slip road because of a breakdown at junction 22. In Buckinghamshire, the M25 anti-clockwise has got delays after an earlier accident at junction 16. All lanes are back open, but delays are back to Maple Cross. Surrey, the M23 northbound recovery work is underway to rescue a broken down van. That's closed a lane from junction 9 at Gatwick Airport to junction 8. London, the M4 westbound is got long delays. It's partially blocked because of an accident at junction 2 for Brentford. The queues are back for the A4 towards Hammersmith, and the M25 Kew Bridge clockwise has got delays after an earlier breakdown.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
What
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's me, Bev Turner, in for Michelle this week. Now, Lord Blunkett, who is Home Secretary under Labour, has urged Sir Keir Starmer to introduce a biometric digital ID to tackle the small boats crisis. Labour tried this before, of course, in the old-fashioned way with an actual card in 2008, but the idea was roundly rejected by the British public. This time, they want to get them through on the idea that they could stop the small boats. Joseph, do you think they would?
They absolutely would not stop the small boats. Isn't it interesting how limits on our freedoms can be packaged up as something we like? People are worried about the small boats, they're worried about illegal immigration, and now all of a sudden ID cards can help where nothing else could. I would say that unfortunately, this was a ploy by Labour to limit freedoms, Blairite Labour, to limit freedoms and collect information. We would still be subject to the same treaties that we are now. We would still have the same coalition of left-wing lawyers and activists who prevent planes taking off when people are trying to be deported. So I think it's actually a load of nonsense. There's no way it would help.
This is a Tony Blair pet project, James, and we know that he's very influential with Keir Starmer behind the scenes at the moment, and actually also in public-facing roles as well. Every time Tony Blair talks about this, he's one of the very few people, I have to say, who is honest about the intentions of the global leaders to push through a biometric. At least he tells us it's what he wants. And every time he talks about it, he said it will be tied to your vaccine status. It will be a health card of sorts with conditions attached. But are they just therefore trying to get it in under the guise of, oh, well, you're all frightened of the boat people, let's just stop this with, when they step aboard, we'll scan their eye, we'll give them an ID, problem solved?
Yeah, of course, and they've been through so many different iterations. I mean, they started pushing this idea now more than 20 years ago when they were in government, and it was part of an unpleasant authoritarian streak that there was in the Labour government, in the Blair Labour government. And yes, they said it would deal with immigration. It would make the welfare system more efficient. It would make interfacing with public services easier. Then they said it was going to stop organised crime. Is going to stop terrorism, as if, you know, the one group of people that you can guarantee are going to be able to get themselves a counterfeit ID card are going to be organised crime. I mean, it's a top-down assault on our liberties. In the most benign way you can look at it, it's to make the administration of us easier. Yeah. That's the most benign way you can look at it, and then you can look at it in some less benign ways.
You could argue that with a global population growing enormously every year, maybe humanity needs some sort of organisation. Maybe we need a little filing system.
We are organised enough. The last thing we need is an obligatory ID card. It's the mark not of a free country. It's very alien to everything that we've ever done here.
Except the young people.
But what I would add is that what we don't need is additional bureaucracy. If you want to solve the migrant crisis, you need a willingness to act. You need to actually bring in some policies around what happens if you come here and you jump the queue. And you need a way of actually deporting people to with a viable scheme which will actually work. An ID card, it's just a red herring. It's got nothing to do with it.
In his article that he's written in the Daily Mail today, and Lord Blunkett clearly feels very strongly about this, he says that it would smash the human trafficking gangs if those people coming ashore knew that it would be either an eyeball or a face scan or a fingerprint, and then they would be monitorable. They would be able to be monitored. Does he have any sort of point? I'm trying to be optimistic.
I really don't think so. The idea is that you would need this card in order to access services.
And of course, it wouldn't be your card. It would start on your phone.
It will start on your phone, and as you say, it will then get linked up to more and more things. There aren't actual people who work. Let's say the services that people use. There are no doctors who work in the NHS who say, "Oh, I know what will help us be able to see our patients sooner. I know what's going to deal with the 8 a.m. rush for people to call up their GPs. Oh, this new thing that we have to, this new bit of technology that's going to cost billions that we have to engage with." No actual frontline services are saying this is what we need to deliver our services better. It's this very odd small group of politicians who have been pushing this idea in these different forms at different times. It's not practical, and exactly as you said, it's against our traditions. We're meant to be born free. We're not meant to have a policeman come up to you and say, "Where are your papers?" It's not right.
One of the chilling things that Lord Blunkett says in this article is that when he was Home Secretary, he said, "I introduced an experimental ID scheme that produced dramatic results." I don't quite remember what those dramatic results were, but maybe I was doing. If Britain had kept the system and developed it, the small boat scandal might never have happened. And he regrets that he didn't introduce it, first of all, with teenagers. He said, "With hindsight, I should have enlisted teenagers first, offering them free passports at 16 with an ID card alongside." I mean, I find that really sinister.
No, it is sinister.
It's because they wouldn't know anything different.
Yeah.
Correct.
So they would...
And he said, and by
you're just
now-
told, if you want to travel, this is the way you do it.
Well, by now, they would be in their mid-30s and they would automatically have been enrolled into the system. Well, thank goodness it didn't work. But now, when I say about the youth, they are so used to, particularly since 2020, the idea that the government tells you what to do and they tie it to your vax passport as it was during the pandemic. I don't think there will be the resistance from the younger generation that we might want to see.
Well, luckily, we're an ageing population, and as we did with Scotland, the older people will bring sanity. Should it come to it, but it won't, and it just goes to show you, if you believe in an idea strongly enough, you'll keep putting it back. No matter how much society has changed or how much people don't want it, you'll find a way to bring it back.
I mean, look, we're all facing the hassle of tech at the moment. Like, nothing works, does it? It feels like we are in an actual interface at the moment between the past and the future, where the technology's sort of there, but it's not working. Maybe when you go and get your passport or your driving licence or you apply for something, that actually having your own identity collated with a system, connected to a system, would just make it convenient.
I don't know. I was filled in a government form today on the government website. It happened fast. It was quite easy. I just needed my national insurance number. That's something that I already have. And the thing that's nice about national insurance number, yes, I need that to do my taxes and so on, but no one can come and demand that I show them my national insurance number.
Well, let's see what Paul, our viewer, says. He said, "I've lived for 3 years in a country that uses ID cards. I had one as a resident. A wonderful thing, no messing about, proving who you are with utility bills, etc. And when I had a couple of minor motoring accidents, the culprits had to give me their ID cards until they paid for the damage. Their incentive to pay was without an ID card, normal life. Their incentive to pay because without the ID card, normal life was impossible." Problem is, the UK, our police don't deal with crime. It wouldn't work.
The system is functioning fine. If you get into an accident, what do you think happens now? Like, everyone stands around unable to give their details?
Who are you?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right, thank you, guys. Time for a quick break. Coming up, with billionaires rising by 141. That's right, in the last year alone, and are now collectively worth more than ever. Should we cap the rich? Don't go anywhere.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Danny, there's an irony here, isn't there? And that is this. On the one hand, the BBC expect older viewers to cough up more, and yet every opinion poll in the land shows us, Danny, that older people are the least satisfied with the service they get.
Well, the BBC don't give a damn about older people because, as I discovered when I was binned for being 50 and white from the BBC in the Midlands to diversify the lineup, they're after a younger audience because the longevity of the institution, that's the BBC, Martin, relies on the next generation of licence fee payers. And this is quite important, and it's a great point that you've raised. Anybody who's over the age of 50 certainly 60, the BBC just doesn't care about you because they're interested in attracting the next generation of licence fee payers. And when those 25-year-olds that they're after at the moment become 40 and 45, they'll stop caring about them too. Otherwise, the BBC just won't exist. It relies on new blood, if you like, when it comes to the licence fee. So that's a great point. They just don't care about middle-aged people.
And yet, they're now floating the idea of older people paying more. How would that work? Would it be means tested?
I know if ever you wanted to satisfy your curiosity that the BBC had a socialist agenda, it's the fact that they want the proletariat to pay more, to not pay, and the bourgeoisie to pick up the bill. This is classic Marxism for you. I know we're treating this lightly, Martin, but how would they means test you? Are you going to have to provide evidence of your bank account? And of course, people's financial situation, they change. You know, people's finances are fluid. So one year you may be what they class as wealthy, and then the next year you're not. So it's a situation that I find just impossible. How it's going to work, I just don't know. It's something that I just don't feel happy about.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to Dewbs & Co. It's me, Bev Turner, this evening. Still here with me, thank goodness, former advisor Jeremy Corbyn, James Schneider, and political commentator Joseph David. The other bit I just forgot to get in there with the biometric digital ID. Guess who's lined up to offer this service to us? Have a guess, fellas. Fujitsu, those guys who made such a good job of the post office situation. That should fill you with confidence. Right, should we talk about how many more billionaires there are today than there were even 12 months ago? Well, Forbes' rich list has welcomed 265 newcomers this year. 141 of them are billionaires, more billionaires from last year. That means there are now 2,781 people who are worth more than $1 billion around the world. That is up from 686 since 2020. So the collective wealth of billionaires has risen by 120% over the past decade. Now, gentlemen, I'm all for hard work, rewarding aspiration. These billionaires, there's no doubt about it, most of them, not all of them, most of them will have worked very, very hard. But we're living through a time, James, where it feels, well, it doesn't feel, it is fact, that we've had the most extraordinary transfer of wealth, particularly since the pandemic, which was the gift that kept on giving for certain individuals. How do we maintain aspiration whilst also somehow narrowing that gap?
I don't think those two things are set apart at all, because we're not talking about the aspiration of, you know, being comfortable so you can look after your family, owning your own home, doing some work in your community. Most people have, they want to be rich enough that they can do something for their family or their community. That's not what we're talking about here. I mean, if you're a billionaire, really not what you're pursuing is money, what you're pursuing is power, because that is what that gives you. And that's part of the reason why, you saw the stat about the wealth going up by 120% over the last decade. The global economy over the last decade has not been doing well. In Britain, living standards are where they pay in real terms is where it was in 2005. Basically, everything is worse than it was 10 years ago for the overwhelming majority of people. And that is partly because the immense power that a small number of people have through their extreme wealth allows them to game the system to extend it. And that is essentially what we're seeing. Yes, of course, there were tremendous handouts with COVID, which amplifies inequality. It's the same thing with the way in which quantitative easing was done after the financial crisis. That's not to say that we didn't need a fiscal intervention, i.e. the government didn't have things to do in both cases. But the way in which it did it, again, undemocratically, through the Bank of England, very little oversight, no democratic debate, no votes, had huge distributional impact. Distributional impact is a techie term for gives the rich loads of money and not for everyone else.
Joseph, looking at the people who are on this list, Bernard Arnault and his family, they are in fashion and retail, Louis Vuitton, Sephora, things like that. They are worth a whopping $233 billion. Elon Musk, number 2, tech. Jeff Bezos, retail and tech. Zuckerberg, 4, tech. Larry Ellison, tech. Finance, tech and pharma. I mean, there's a picture here. My worry, I suppose, is that when it comes to tech, there aren't that many jobs in tech.
I understand the worries, and I have to say, of the names that you listed, kudos to them. They're visionaries, and they've changed the world, and that's why they've made so much money. I would be very hesitant to try and regulate earnings, try and regulate wealth. We've seen it before. It always ends in disaster. The way to narrow the gap between rich and poor is aspiration. It's ambition. It's hard work, and a level playing field. Right?
But is there something demoralising?
I'm sorry. The level playing field, the thing that you got to at the end, yes, of course, which having this kind of ridiculous wealth prevents from happening. But the idea that if only we wanted to be a bit richer, we all would be. If only we could aspire to have the personal family fortune of the Walton family or the Arnault family or Jeff Bezos shooting himself off to space in a phallic-shaped
very many people who aspire, very many people who aspire never reach it, right? But aspiration is the driving force. I'll tell you this. My father came to this country on a cargo ship. He managed, with a level playing field, to work hard, buy a house, fund his family, and I can see the path.
But you see, the younger generation can't buy a house now, can they? That's the problem, isn't it? Oh, don't you think the younger generation are just demoralised? Because look at these figures and they go, well, I'm never going to have 100 billion. There's no point even trying.
Well, something is very wrong, actually. I'm, you know, to blow my own trumpet, I'm a social worker, a member of a protected profession, officially. I should be able to get a mortgage and buy a house, right? I can't. I'm a million miles away from it. So something is very wrong. But to limit aspiration, to say you can earn this much and no more, the state's going to take the rest, is very dangerous. Very shaky ground.
Let's say, for example, in Britain...
We've got a few seconds, guys. I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap it up. I think we could have sat chatting all night, don't you? I barely got a word in edgeways. Anyway, thank you so much, Joseph, David, James Schneider. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'll be back on Britain's Newsroom tomorrow morning at 9:30. But up next, it's Farage. Well, Nigel is enjoying his 60th birthday, so Tom Harwood is standing in. But first, though, your weather with Annie.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Well, there will be some further heavy rain first thing across southern areas, but in general, Thursday offers some much drier weather compared to the wet weather we've seen recently. Northeastern areas have suffered the most with the rain throughout today. That rain will clear away through tonight, but the next batch arrives into the southwest. We'll see 2 bursts of rain. This one will turn heavy at first in the southwest, but as it pushes into parts of northern England, it will turn a little bit dry, but most areas will see some heavy outbreaks of rain through the night. Further north and west, though, it should stay dry, and we could see a touch of frostbite tomorrow morning. But it's in the southwest tomorrow morning where the heaviest rain will be, and that will push into parts of Wales, the Midlands, into the southeast throughout the rush hour. So if you are moving about on Thursday morning, expect some tricky travelling conditions. Once that does clear out the way, we'll see a mix of sunshine and showers for many areas of England and Wales. There will be some decent sunny spells in between. It will feel fairly pleasant in that sunshine, but further north, it's going to considerably drier day than it has been lately. We'll see highs of around 10 or 11 degrees across northwestern areas. It's still cold though in the far north of Scotland, and as the next batch of rain bumps into that cold air on Friday morning, there's a risk of some snow across the Highlands and Grampians, and we'll see outbreaks of quite heavy rain push through many northern areas throughout Friday. Further south though, it turns drier as the day goes on, but the weekend is looking unsettled and seasonably windy, but exceptionally mild. That's all for now. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Sean Moore. Starting off in West Yorkshire, the M1 northbound, the exit slip road at junction 45 for Leeds Cross Green has a lane closed because of a broken down vehicle. In Lancashire, the M6 southbound, a vehicle having a tyre change just closed a lane from junction 33 to 32 for the Broughton interchange. Manchester, the M60 anti-clockwise, the exit slip road has a lane closed because of a breakdown at junction 22. Into Buckinghamshire, the M25 anti-clockwise are long delays after an earlier accident before junction 16, queues about to 18 for Chorleywood, but all lanes have reopened. In London, the M4 westbound's got long delays. That's after an earlier accident at junction 2 for Brentford. There's congestion back along the A4 towards Hammersmith, and the M25 QE2 bridge has got delays after an earlier breakdown at junction 31.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, GBNews.